They say absolute power corrupts absolutely, but what happens when corruption itself becomes government policy? In ancient Rome, beneath the marble halls and golden ceilings, power didn't just twist a man's mind. It built an empire of horror where every crime had a form, every cruelty had a cost. And behind it all stood one man who turned human suffering into a daily routine. His name was Caligula, the emperor who didn't just rule Rome, he dismantled its soul. Before we descend into this empire of fear, make sure to like, subscribe, and help this small channel grow so we can keep uncovering history's darkest truths. When Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, known to the world as Caligula, became emperor, Rome believed it was witnessing a miracle. He was the beloved son of the legendary general Germanicus, adored by the legions, descended from Augustus himself. His childhood nickname Caligula, meaning little boots, came from the tiny soldier's sandals he wore while accompanying his father in military camps. So when he took the throne in 37 CE, the city erupted with celebration. After the suffocating paranoia of Emperor Tiberius, Caligula's arrival felt like sunlight after endless night. He reduced taxes, freed political prisoners, sponsored games, repaired roads, and fed the masses. Rome adored him. Senators praised him. The people hailed him as a living god. But the man who once promised renewal would soon become the architect of Rome's most organized nightmare. Just months into his reign, Caligula was struck by a violent illness that nearly killed him. For weeks, he drifted between life and death, burning with fever, raving about the gods, claiming to speak directly with Jupiter. Rome prayed. Temples overflowed with offerings. And when the emperor finally rose from his sickbed, the people rejoiced, but their joy was short-lived, because something inside him had changed forever. He began to see himself not as a ruler of men, but as a divine being above them. The first command was simple, yet disturbing. Every statue of every god in Rome was to have its head replaced with his own. Soon, his eyes turned cold, his voice sharp, and his nights were filled with whispers to unseen spirits. Servants found him pacing the palace halls at dawn, sleepless and muttering that the moon itself took orders from him. Whatever sanity had once lived in Caligula died with that fever. It started within his own household. His sisters, Drusilla, Julia Livilla, and Agrippina the Younger, were no longer just family. They became symbols of his obsession and instruments of his power. He publicly worshipped Drusilla as a goddess, and when she died, his grief turned violent. He outlawed laughter, music, even private meals. Those who disobeyed were executed. But grief soon evolved into something worse. His attention shifted to the noble families of Rome. Wives and daughters of senators were summoned to the palace and forced to take part in ceremonies. The emperor designed himself. What looked like ritual worship was, in truth, systematic humiliation. Caligula observed from a gilded throne, taking notes: who cooperated, who resisted, who pretended. Those notes became blackmail. A senator who smiled too eagerly was rewarded. One who hesitated found his son missing the next day, mutilated as a warning. In Caligula's Rome, there was no neutrality. You were either complicit or destroyed. If you're fascinated by how power transforms into terror, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us uncover the darkest corners of history that textbooks often avoid. Soon, cruelty wasn't random, it was routine. A bureaucratic machine was born. Physicians were ordered to inspect women for fertility in front of the emperor himself. Records were kept: names, ages, social rank, endurance, and performance. Everything had a price tag. A senator's wife, 16 tercios. His daughter, 2,000. Both together, 5,000. The payments went directly into the imperial treasury, labeled as contributions to the state. Caligula even renamed parts of the palace, calling it the Temple of Divine Service. Each room had a purpose: the chamber of Jupiter for ritual acts, the hall of Venus for divine unions, the shrine of Priapus for punishment and degradation. What had once been the heart of Roman politics became a temple of orchestrated horror. Senators walked those same halls, forced to hear and remain silent. It wasn't just sadism, it was governance through fear. The emperor's madness didn't stop there. Secret documents later uncovered described a selective breeding policy. Noble women deemed most fertile were forced to bear children raised as imperial dependents. Every pregnancy, every birth, every death was logged in ledgers beneath the palace. The empire was recording its own corruption in perfect bureaucratic order. Caligula even targeted the sons of senators. Boys were dressed in silk, painted with white lead and vermilion, and paraded like trophies. He called it refinement. The Senate called it silence. Families were turned against themselves. Fathers signed documents handing over their wives for the good of Rome. Those who refused paid with the lives of their children. Senator Cornelius once tried to resist. The next morning, his 8-year-old son was found on the Senate steps, still alive, carved with a message that made him surrender. Humiliation was no longer punishment. It was law. Running this empire of cruelty required structure. Clerks kept meticulous files, victims' names, their acts, their injuries, the guards assigned to them, the midwives who delivered unwanted children. There were accountants, scribes, and physicians, all doing their jobs, all paid by the state. And because everyone had a task, no one felt guilty. They were simply following orders. The horror became so systematic that it resembled theater. Caligula staged rituals during full moons. Women and gladiators, forced to perform as senators, watched from the stands. Every act documented, every scream recorded, every humiliation measured. Even vendors profited selling ointments for pain, abortions, or cosmetics to hide bruises. Greed turned Rome into an accomplice. The city fed on its own corruption. Among Caligula's guards was Cassius Chaerea, a soldier once mocked by the emperor for his voice and weakness. What began as humiliation turned into fury. On January 24th, 41 CE, Caligula prepared for another ceremony, one meant to surpass all others in depravity. But before he could begin, Chaerea and a small group of guards cornered him in a passage beneath the theater. They stabbed him again and again, 30 times in total, the final blow delivered to his groin, a symbolic strike against everything he had defiled. His wife and young daughter were murdered soon after. Rome wanted his bloodline erased, but the system he built, the machinery of obedience, silence, and greed, couldn't be killed so easily. The new emperor, Claudius, ordered Caligula's memory, erased statues destroyed, inscriptions chiseled away, coins melted. Officially, he never existed, but memories don't obey decrees. The children born from his programs grew up with no past. Women carried their silence into old age. Fathers avoided their daughters' eyes. Rome moved on, but the wounds never healed. Because Caligula hadn't just indulged in cruelty, he had organized it. He proved that evil could be recorded, categorized, and made profitable. He didn't simply commit atrocities, he built the manual for them. And manuals, once written, never truly die. So before you leave this story behind, remember to like, share, and subscribe, because the more we uncover these forgotten truths, the closer we come to understanding the dangerous patterns of power that still echo through history.